Welcome to the All Things Real Estate Podcast with our very own Josh Barker. With more than 20 years of experience and over 5,000 properties sold, Josh brings a unique perspective to the real estate market. Let's get started.
It is July 2024, and it's insanely hot. This is the mid of the week of what? 110 plus degrees for a week straight.
It's hot, man. Yeah. This is not the Chamber of Commerce weather that we're always looking for, but this July and August heat kind of keeps the population where it's at because not everybody can deal with it.
This is like if somebody's coming here, they go and they see Shingletown and they're like, I fell in love with it. You're like, oh, now is the time to be in Shingletown.
Yes, it is.
We're going to talk again in January when you're coming down that hill.
Yeah.
So this not the time to be in Reading. But anyway, past the heat. So you and I were talking right before we started filming, we were talking about interest rates because that has been the overwhelming dark cloud over real estate for
the wet blanket.
2.5 years? How long has it been?
Well, the last 3 years. Yeah, the last 3 years it's been ticking up, so.
And we had, last year they thought they had inflation under control and there was they were flirting with, I think we might lower some interest rates. And then the inflation numbers came in and they're like, on second thought, we're going to keep them high. What's going on now?
Well, the Federal Reserve came out and basically like 2 or 3 days ago, the chairman came out and was just saying that the unemployment is starting to hit the numbers that they wanted, closer to that 4% range.
Okay.
So they're happy about that, which sounds odd, but they are targeting a certain amount of unemployment. And then the year-over-year inflation was just over 3%. And the month-to-month was actually half of what they expected it to be in terms of inflation. So it's all things are pointing towards everything beginning to moderate like it was supposed to. I think the Federal Reserve now has pretty much what it needs to start cutting rates, and I think they're beginning to talk about it. So the only thing they could change between now and when they might cut rates would be is if they get different information between now and, let's say, September or between now and December. But if all of the fact patterns continue to stay in the direction they currently are, we're probably going to look at interest rates starting to go down by the end of the year.
Any idea how far down, or that's just?
Well, some of the experts are looking at it and saying, well, it took they were increasing it 1/4 basis point at a time. After that first one, I think they did a 1/2 point. But so maybe if they follow in lockstep with that, maybe they'll do the same. But most people are saying 1/4 point reduction, and perhaps at each meeting over the next year and a half. And if that's the case, then we'll be right now we're at interest rates around 7.125. If rates were to drop 1.5 points over the next year and a half, then you're probably looking at a rate environment. It would be in the high 5s. By the end of next year.
Do you think we're ever going to, this might be too far, I guess there's too many factors, but I'll go ahead and ask the question is, do you think we're ever going to get in that 3% range again? Do you think No,
I think that was artificial. I think it was created as a result of the pandemic. I think they were really, really concerned about the whole market shutting off completely and having a complete depression. So really interest rates dropped down to something that wasn't, common. What it was for a really long period of time prior to that, though, was around 4.5% to 4.75%. And it was like that for like 6, 7, 8, 9 years, right? Mm-hmm. So do I think that we could get back to a rate environment that was similar to what it was prior to the pandemic? I do, which would put rates around, like I said, 4.5%, 4.75%, maybe within the next 24 months.
And if interest rates are going to go down, the Reading market's just going to start to pick up.
Well, the volume, yeah. So last month we had, roughly 200 properties that closed escrow in the whole market,
which is very, very low.
It's terrible. I mean, in terms of for the industry, for lenders and for real estate brokers, it's really bad because the previous year we're at 250, previous year was 300, previous year was 350. So we've gone from 350 down all the way now to 200, about a 45% hit in total sales volume. And it's beginning to show up in the economic numbers around the country because, there's a lot of additional transactions that are created when homes sell. And so, being in the 200s in July when we should probably be closer to 300 as a normal market, that's slow.
Yeah, of course, there's a whole ecosystem around when homes sell. I mean, beyond just the lending, the real estate, the escrow, you have all types of construction. Hey, I moved in.
You have carpet, paint, furniture.
Appliances.
The revenue that's generated for the counties through those transaction fees that take place. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different entities that benefit from transactions that take place beyond just the immediate, the ones you would think of. So that's definitely a huge difference. And when these rates come down, what we think is going to happen is that pent up seller demand, people that want to sell but are kind of stuck at a 3% interest rate, they don't want to give it up for today's 7.125. When rates start getting down to a point that it's more acceptable, you'd start to see them selling their properties, and we're expecting we'll see some of that.
Are we seeing an increase at all in building permits being pulled or anything like that?
The year to date was lower than 40 as through May. It was up from last year, but down from this almost 80 from the year before. So no, it's not significant. D.R. Horton is our local home builder, one of them, but it's a national home builder most people have heard of. They're the ones that are predominantly bringing product to the market right now. We're representing some of their units in some subdivisions. I can tell you that they're really aggressively trying to work with local contractors. I think they've kind of figured out the formula a little bit better now about how to bring product to the market at a price that's still affordable, but also somewhat profitable for them, with optimism that things will get better in time.
So the only way that the real estate market in Reading changes is interest rates.
Oh yeah, interest rates are ultimately, going to give us a really good indication of what's next. So as rates come down, affordability improves. As affordability improves, transactions increase, and the whole thing starts to get moving again. But that's something the Federal Reserve's, like I said, that's why I think they're probably not going to come in and do any drastic shift in rate policy. They're just going to start to do 0.25% rate cuts over time.
I'm going to shift hard. This is going to be one of those turn into the wind really quick.
Okay.
Because I was reading an article on the problems they're having in Europe with rent, and there's a big backlash against, Airbnb or just any of these vacation rentals. And I was wondering about Reading, if we're not building inventory, what's going on with the local rental market?
Well, it's a really good point. So there's two different types of rental market. You have the one that you just talked about, that vacation rental market, right? And then you have the long-term rental market, which more people are accustomed to. But on the short term, I think the city of Reading came out and they issued 400 plus permits that you could apply for. So basically they said as a city, and I won't get this number right, I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but just a little over 400 what they would allow for vacation rentals in the city. I think we're at 150 to 200 max maybe that have actually applied. So we're not even, that's not even representing a very large part of the market. Secondly, I would say though that the demand for those has already fallen off quite a bit. We don't have as many traveling nurses. There's contracts that are being written at the city or at the healthcare providers that are more related to long-term employment versus these traveling nurses. So you don't have as much of that anymore. And we obviously don't have as much migratory shifting around as a result of the pandemic. So a lot of that vacation rental stuff has slowed down quite a bit. On the long-term rental side, all of our property managers that we talk to are telling us they have vacancy rates that are around 7%.
That seems a little bit high.
It's not actually, because
That's not high?
no, because if you factor in for the fact that when I take a unit back in cases, it might have to be rehabbed, new carpet, new paint, just the process of turning over inventory, it's actually relatively low. It also means that if you have a rental and you choose to sell it, choose to rent it out, you probably won't have a problem doing it. The thing that's more concerning right now is state of California has that proposition that they're trying to push, and whether or not it makes the ballot, I'm not sure, but Prop 13 or Prop 33, which is rent control, where they're going to try to allow for local municipalities to make their own decisions when it comes to rent control. I'm 110% adamantly against it. I think it's a horrible idea to do any form of rent control in the state of California. I truly do think it's a bad idea. But they're looking at
Josh,
that.
the people that came up with this idea are putting together a high-speed rail in California. These are smart people, Josh. They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. And I can appreciate the heart behind a lot of these types of ideas, because you're trying to, your thought is that, well, I'm protecting somebody from paying higher rent. But for our listeners, I would encourage you to consider the thought of supply and demand. The only true solution, long-term to the cost for rent is to increase supply. And any initiative, any policy that would put any pressure at all on a person building apartment buildings or a person building homes, anything that would cause them to maybe take pause to that is a bad idea. And so if an investor thinks that rent control perhaps is going to have an impact on their ability to be profitable with that venture in the future, they're not going to do it. And that'll literally start to take away the supply side. And so for those reasons, I think the rent control thing is a bad idea. I don't think it's going to pass because I'm hopeful that there's some smart people out there still that are going to say no.
In this state?
Fair enough. But it's out there. We have customers asking us about it. And I've actually had some clients list with me personally recently out of concerns of rent control having an impact here locally. And I'm telling them what I'm telling you, that I don't think it will actually pass, but you know, who am I to say one way or the other?
The thing that you said in there that I probably misinterpreted was that you said it would be to the local council or local city or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Municipalities, yeah.
Well, then I would think, okay, well, that's a good thing, right? Because then the locals get to decide. Because if you're telling me like, well, either, you know, somebody in LA can tell you what you're going to do or somebody in Reading can tell you what you're going to do. I'm like, well, I would pick the Reading person. I'd pick local. But that's not, you must be interpreting it wrong.
Well, it's not so much that you're interpreting it wrong. It's just that, again, when you're thinking about builders, contractors, investors, any policy that would give them pause to the optimism of building product is a bad idea.
Got it.
Because the answer to the affordability issue here in the state of California is on the supply side. We need to simply increase the supply of homes that are available. When you do that, you start to have this plateau effect on pricing. And in some cases, you can actually bring pricing down. It's the scarcity of housing that pushes prices up like they are. And so that's why just from a general description, I'd say that rent control is a really bad idea. Now, there's exceptions to that. A few years ago, we had a really bad fire here locally. And almost instantaneously, we saw property owners with rentals, and we have rentals, but we didn't do this. They immediately in some cases, started raising their rents right away. Why? Because the demand overnight went up 1,000 different dwellings overnight.
I think those same people bought caseloads of hand sanitizer when COVID kicked in. So.
Right. So there was some rules that are put in place to protect a community or a location when those kind of catastrophic events. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about in broad strokes, rent control, bad idea.
Got it. No, I'm a big believer in the free market. It's not perfect, but I think overwhelmingly the examples we've seen, like when you said rent control, I mean, when I've seen rent control in play, I've seen basically things go to shambles.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's the next word that comes to mind is ghetto.
Right.
It's just that now there's no profitability, so the land and they become
they
slumlords.
stop maintaining the properties.
Yeah, exactly.
Properties start to deteriorate into condition. They're not being maintained very well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm big on the market only because it's I haven't seen something better. Mm-hmm. The market, we're supposed to have this checks and balance, but I always lean towards a little more free market.
Sure.
You know what I mean? A little less regulation. In my life, I've seen overregulation stifle everything, and then, you know, prices go up, and I think that's where we are right now.
Sure.
Because I think there's a lot of artificial things keeping building down. Like you said, in California, we should be building a lot more. We obviously have the need for it.
We do.
Right. And anyway, you know, it's funny. I think when you talk to a lot of the people that renters and stuff, I get asked a lot of friends about 1031 exchange. Mm-hmm. So that idea of like, okay, this does not have to do with your primary residence, but how you can sell a property, but you have to put the money back into the market. And can you go over like what a 1031 exchange is?
Yeah. Now, again, I was talking to a client the other day about that very thing because they were talking to me about selling their rental property in California, and we're thinking about moving it out of California, you know, that equity, if you will, mm-hmm. to a place that wasn't talking about rent control.
Yeah.
And so for our listeners, if you don't know what a 1031 exchange is, it's essentially a 1031 tax deferred exchange is when you sell a property and then you trade it for like kind property in the market. And so let's say I own a duplex. Let's say that duplex is worth, you know, $500,000, and then I want to exchange that for another multifamily unit of some sort somewhere else. I can actually sell that property, and then instead of taking possession of the profits, the money goes into an account, an accommodator, you know, a 1031 exchange company, and it sits there. And then I locate another property somewhere else that I want to purchase. And when I close on it, the money leaves that account and it goes over to the new property to pay for that property. And then by me never touching the money, I'm satisfying an exchange. And there's a couple of different maneuvers to it. Like number one, like when I sell my property and it closes escrow, I've only got up to 45 days to identify up to 3 different properties, that I might choose to purchase. And then also from when I close the escrow on my property, I've got up to 6 months to close on one of those 3 properties that I've identified. And so, the idea is I'm deferring paying those taxes that I would have otherwise paid on my profits. I'm deferring it and exchanging into another property or taking another position in the market. And if I don't touch any of the money, if I buy equal or greater value, then there's no taxable event at that time. There will be one later if I go to sell that property. And if I choose to not spend all of that money, and let's say I sold something at 500 and end up buying something at 450, that $50,000 is what's called the boot, and I'll be paying taxes on that portion.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
I thought it was either 500,000 plus $1 or more, or you were.
No.
I didn't realize. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, you can buy down. It's just that the portion that you don't use, ultimately it's called the boot, and you'll be paying taxes on that based on whatever your tax scenario is based on that property. But people are still doing it. We're seeing it at a pretty high volume. Usually between now and the end of the year, we see more exchanges because people are tax planning and doing things. And exchange is super common because real estate still has that beautiful thing that's called depreciation. And so a lot of people do exchange into larger and larger properties over time. And the thought being is that they're trying to continue to enjoy the depreciation that comes from these assets.
Well, you're also getting effectively a 0% interest loan on what you owe in taxes from the government. So
Right.
you're going to pay the taxes eventually, or your heirs will.
Yeah. Oh, no. Or you die.
There you go.
Which
we all do.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Guaranteed.
Yep. Pay taxes and die, right? And I'm not a CPA. I don't play one on TV, but I would say this is that, one of the benefits, I suppose, if you were to die, is that most properties then are reassessed at fair market value. And the depreciation schedule resets. I mean, talk to your CPA, understand what I'm talking about. But so there, for us, my wife and I aren't really thinking that we're going to sell any of our properties long term. We think that they'll stay in our trust. My wife and I pass away at some point, and our children would receive the benefit of those properties being reset in value. And then the depreciation starts over again. And so, until the tax law changes dramatically, it's still a huge value proposition to own in real estate.
And this is designed, somebody might say, like, well, why would the government do that? And it's designed to keep the economy going in that it's one of the drivers of them building more properties and getting people to invest. Because if everybody got taxed every time, you would just stifle sales.
Oh, I thought it was because politicians own a bunch of real estate.
It could be that too. The publishers are the consumers. Yeah, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think you're more right than I am. I was being. This is one of those rare times that I'm optimistic.
I want to pinch your cheek, man. I think you're sweet.
I was like, I just never thought about it like that. Anyway, well, but it does. It keeps things going, because otherwise, if everybody had to pay taxes on that, people wouldn't sell their property.
Yeah,
it wouldn't move along.
Well,
it wouldn't keep the engine going.
It is a challenge. In fact, I was just down in Huntington Beach for the 4th of July, which, by the way, I just a plug. I don't work for the Chamber of Commerce in Huntington Beach, but I can tell you it's probably one of the most really patriotic parades I've ever been able to enjoy. The 4th of July parade down there.
Oh, wow.
It's phenomenal. And I was talking to some families that were down there. A friend of ours lives over there off the main street there. And so we were able to sit there in the front and watch everybody going by and just talking to people. And what I learned was, and this is actually a huge problem right now in Orange County, is that you have families that are not able to afford any type of housing situation in Orange County. And then you have elderly people that are living in homes under Prop 13 and can't afford to leave. And so what the consequence of this has been, at least down there from what I understand, is that these schools are closing. You know how we have these little community schools all around Shasta County?
Yes.
Okay. Those infill subdivision type of schools?
Yep.
Well, down there, those are closing because there's no more kids. The kids are leaving because their families can't afford to buy those homes, and the older folks that live there can't afford to sell them. Yeah, it's an absolute crazy thing. So going back to our conversation from earlier, it's no easy solutions, I suppose, but building is really the only thing to get the California back into affordability.
And there's a bunch behind that. And I wonder how much of the cost of building is really controlled by regulation versus, you've got labor and you've got materials. I know that pulling permits and getting certain things, it is a percentage. It's not free, but I mean, is it 8% of a build, 10%, 7%? I mean, if you really, would that really, even if you wiped them clean, would that be, oh, okay, we were holding off the, you know what I mean? Labor and materials are still huge, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the secret is. I don't know if this is just, we're Rome circa, 392 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But are we seeing, along the lines of what you said, we had such a hot market. Everything was great. Interest rates were great. Everything was just going up. No one was ever talking about foreclosures. Is that starting to shift now? Because you and I, a few months ago, we talked about, I can't remember if it was on camera or off camera, but we were talking about how much debt there was. It was sad. People who had so much credit card debt that we were starting to see issues with their mortgages, even if they had great rates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point right now, they're reporting that the debt level right now has jumped dramatically. And
never higher.
Yeah, credit card debt is unfortunately through the roof. And but the thing about housing is that if you lived in your home and you bought, let's say 2 years or more ago, then your interest rates are extremely favorable. And if you go look at the rental market right now or go look to purchase another home or anything, it's probably more expensive than your current living situation. And so I think that you may not pay your credit card sooner than you won't pay your mortgage, right? And that's actually showing up in some of the numbers. So if I were to look right now in Shasta County at the number of foreclosures just a few days ago, I think we were sitting right around 170 that were in some stage of foreclosure. But even if 30% of those came to market, which might even be high, but let's just say that 30%, that'd only be 50. And if those 50 came to the market over the next 12 months, that's only, roughly 4 a month. And so, 4 a month would be, not that it doesn't impact the families that lose their homes, but it has no impact at all other than maybe a positive one on the inventory side of our market. So, for me, when I was selling real estate in 07, 08, 09, when the foreclosure market was just crazy, I would say that 65, 70% of all the sales were foreclosures or short sales.
That's crazy.
And, prices were, in the gutter, so to speak. So this isn't anything like that. I mean, it's like a ripple, maybe not even that. It's so insignificant. Again, not for the families, but for how it impacts the real estate market right now. So I don't see foreclosures being the black herring or whatever you'd want to say, or the black swan or whatever, to the market right now. I just don't think it plays in.
Not in Redding, but I wonder about nationally. I wonder about some of these larger markets.
Well, I think the bigger question would be that I can't really see is, with all of these required forbearance programs, and these are the programs that banks are required to take a consumer through before they foreclose. How many people are really in those and they're not being reported? How many people are really behind on their payment, but the bank hasn't taken any action at all whatsoever? Those types of things could be happening and we wouldn't necessarily know about it. It wouldn't show up on any report that I can see. And so I think that's maybe there, but I suspect it's not very big.
Yeah, I don't know. When I see the economic numbers, they just don't make sense to me. Like you said, the 4% unemployment, it's only 3% inflation, but it's also 3% inflation after 8% inflation after 8%. So it's it's
tight.
It's if you look over the course of the last 24 months, inflation, it's depending on what you look at. I mean, the numbers are huge.
Oh, it's still tight.
I just wonder how it's going to. Where does it fix itself? And I feel like this is the part in the movie where the hero says, "Well, it's going to have to get worse before it gets better." You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the state of California, this is a little different than the rest of the country because the state of California had its own unique thought that they were going to raise the minimum wage. And, almost everybody now is up against that $20 an hour situation.
Yeah.
But what it's doing actually is it's creating compression in wages between $20 and $28 an hour. And so, I've been with your company for 5 years. I was being paid $25 an hour. Now I'm going to have a person that came in and is only here for 2 months and is making $20 an hour. And it's going to create this tightening, if you will, in terms of income. And those people are all competing for the same products in the market. And so inflation is truly just in California, because it's California's deal, right? California is creating its own inflationary environment by doing this. And I don't think anybody would argue that if you go to a restaurant right now. I mean, you can see how much more things are costing. It's no longer...
Or the store.
Yeah. Going to a restaurant today, Used to be an option of, oh, do you want to make dinner at home or would you like to go out to a restaurant? Now it's like restaurant eating is almost a special event for a lot of people now because the cost is just that high.
Yeah.
And that's having an impact, but we'll see how it goes. But translating all the way back into the foreclosure market, I don't see that yet.
We'll see how it plays out in the next 12 months. Something that's kicking in next month and has been on, we talked about several times, is that NAR, not NRA. I think at one point I said NRA a couple of times, but NAR, that settlement that they had, and then they made an agreement with their settlement, and that's all kicking in August.
It is.
And
for us, it's kicking in really soon.
Yeah.
Our local board of realtors came out and told us through their communication channels that they will be removing broker compensation from the multiple listing service starting on August 1st.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to put it on your website or anything, right? That's where I get confused what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
I know not in the MLS, but
well, the way that the verbiage is being stated is that a seller will not be able to make offers of compensation via the multiple listing service to buyer brokers. And so will you be able to have it on your own website? I've talked to many brokers around the country that say yes, and that's exactly what they intend to do. So what does that mean? That means that an agent will go to a website that's owned by the realtor that has the listing and look to see if there's any compensation. But I don't know if any seller would always know that is even available. So I think that they're probably just going to call the listing agent and ask.
Got it.
I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. And we're prepared for that. That's how we're set up. We're set up so that, agents in the marketplace that call our office will be able to know right up front whether or not our seller has chosen to make offers of compensation to the buying broker. They just got to call and ask.
Now, this was a trade organization, National Association of Realtors, saying, hey, look, if you want to be a realtor, this is how we're going to do this. But there's also been talk about the federal government getting involved and enforcing this even outside of the trade, right?
So this
everywhere.
So with the few minutes we have, I'll try to nail this thing down as fast as I can. Lawsuit in Missouri several months back. As a result, there was a $1 billion settlement between National Association of Realtors and a collection of brokers in order to settle this dispute. The dispute essentially was saying that all of these conglomerates, National Association of Realtors and all these large brokers were working together, colluding, if you will, to artificially keeping commissions high. That was the argument. Bottom line, the brokerages and the NAR had lost. As a result, huge penalty, almost $1 billion in paid out fees. And then 2 policy changes that came down through the National Association of Realtors. One, agents will have to sign a buyer-broker agreement with buyers before showing property. That'll start in the middle of August. But sooner, because the second rule was sellers will not be able to make offers of compensation to buying brokers via the multiple listing service by the middle of August. Well, our board has taken that action August 1st.
Got it.
Which means if we don't have a buyer-broker agreement in place by August 1st, then we don't have the ability to negotiate a fee with the seller on August 1st. So for us, it's not the middle of August. For us, August 1st is the date it's starting.
Got it.
What's interesting, though, is that a few days ago, Supreme Court came out with a Chevron case, or they repealed the Chevron case.
Yeah.
And I don't want to stay in the politics of this thing, but basically what it said is that these different agencies within the government were overstepping and basically writing legislation in some ways or fashion, or at least perceived that way, and it should be done by the Congress, right?
Yeah.
So
basically, people working for the government were effectively making laws.
Yes, and that's how they seen it. Now, this came from a lawsuit from Missouri, so it's not quite the same. But DOJ, Department of Justice, has been involved in this suit, which is to your point. They're actually wanting their opinion to be made, and I'm like, I'm not sure how much they're going to say now. I've heard multiple listing services east of the Mississippi stating that they will not be complying with the offers of compensation on the MLS. They're going to continue to do it. And what they're going to what their statement is right now is they're stating that it's a freedom of speech. If a seller chooses to tell people that they're willing to pay a buying broker, that there should be no agency that would prevent you from being able to say it. So interesting argument. I have a feeling we're still all going to do the same thing on August 1st and follow the rules. And then perhaps within the next 6 months, they're going to come back and tell us that, oh, you know what, we're changing that particular one. I think the buyer broker agreement is good. I actually really do, because I don't think buyers we're not involved enough in the past. And I think that the opportunity for them to be more involved in how much their agent actually gets paid for the services they offer, I think that's a really good thing. I just think that offers of compensation from a seller, I think that it's not a big deal for it to be on the multiple listing service. I just think it should also be on all the websites that the realtors have, so that the buyers know what their agent could be receiving in compensation, right? Or at least being offered on the multiple listing service to those agents.
I get what they're trying to do. I think you're right, though. I think they could have done it. They could have done it a little bit different. Yeah. But I immediately thought of that song, "Richmond, North of Richmond." Lawyers.
You want to sing it?
What?
You want to sing it?
No, I don't want to sing it. But just, lawyers in a room decided the way the world should go. And they said this is, but I get the idea of just more transparency, which I always like. I think should be more transparency. I think buyers should have more, they should be educated a little bit more in the process, and just the communication should be higher.
Totally agree.
It's too big of a deal for it to be behind, smoke and mirrors. And in a lot of places, that is how it is.
Yep.
That said, at some point, the consumer has to take some obligation. Yeah. And I worry that we, in an attempt to stop the bad guys, we overburden infrastructure to make it to where, consumers don't have to, they don't have to think or know about anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, no, come on. You knew tobacco come on. Yeah. You knew, you know that drinking 100 ounces of soda a day is probably not good. You know what I mean? And these lawsuits it's like, come on, there's some balance in there.
Well, we have to go, and we're almost out of time, but I would say that in pursuit of perfection, you can actually eliminate everything. So be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
So,
well, Josh, I don't think the temperature is going to go down anytime soon.
No.
So try to stay cool, and thank you for your time, and I'll see you in a month.
Hey, I'm glad to. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying the All Things Real Estate podcast, please feel free to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.